In the eyes of Ugandans, courts of law are meant to dispense justice to all on the principle of equality and fairness. Yet the question of their independence has always arisen, threatening the legitimacy of these courts. Alphonse Owiny-Dollo is Deputy Chief Justice, and he is on the spot tonight. My Lord, thank you very much for accepting our request to speak to you. We speak to you, we want to look back. 1972, to be exact, the 21st of September. Chief Justice is abducted from his court, taken away, never to be seen again. I'm talking about Benedict Kiwanuka. And I'm saying this because I know you're organizing a memorial lecture in honor of this man. Quite a number of people will be coming, I can imagine, will be saying, are we likely to slide back to such days? What would you tell them?
Thank you, Mr. Amara. 21st September will always remain the darkest day in the annals of our judiciary. It certainly commemorates a day of monumental tragedy in the history of Uganda. That's the day when the first Ugandan national to become a Chief Justice was brutally, blatantly dragged out of his chambers, out of his official chambers in the High Court of Uganda, in broad daylight, and forcibly taken away, never to be seen again. There is certainly no doubt that Benedicto Kiwanuka is dead. That's not a matter for contention. As I said, I believe and hope Uganda does not see the likes of what happened to Benedicto Kiwanuka 46 years ago. Because as you say, the judiciary which is the central pillar in the administration of justice, in the defense of the rule of law, has a critical role to ensure that there is peace in a country. History tells us there are many societies, there are many people, there are many countries that have known dictatorship of the worst form, where there is no parliament, the head of the country or the head of state rules by decree. But in all those instances, still the judiciary, by whatever name it is called, is maintained.
I want to refresh your mind, yes, my lord, because yes, a couple of years ago, yes, there was a general who is a child of the revolution, who told a judge in court that, where were you when we were fighting? I think that was a commission of inquiry.
Yes.
And I also want to remind you that at one point, members of the police force and the military invaded the Temple of Justice. In fact, defiled the Temple of Justice. In this very administration, one wonders where you get that open to destiny to think that we can never slide back. Yet those are pointers of very dangerous episodes, and that we could actually slide back.
Thank you. The general who told a judge of this court, of our judiciary, that where were you when we were fighting, when we were in the bush, does not represent the aspiration of many Ugandans who look to a just and peaceful society. He certainly didn't fight for himself. If I was the judge, I would have told him, that is precisely why I'm asking you to look into the camera, and tell the people of Uganda whether what you're doing is right. Because if the purpose of going to the bush was to fight for oneself, then another person will go to the bush tomorrow and fight for themselves. Where will it end? But that said, I still maintain that I hope and believe that we can never descend, we can never slide back to what happened on the 21st of September 1972. I am not saying we're not going to see more of evil days. I'm not saying the abuse of the rule of law, abuse of judicial officers, abuse of power is not going to continue. It will. But I think the darkest hour we've known as a judiciary is 21st
During
September.
a presidential petition almost 2 years ago, you recommended, gave some recommendations to the government to make some constitutional amendments in the areas of elections and others, and actually you gave a timeline and a deadline. Up to almost on the eve of the expiry of that deadline, I suppose I'm told that's when they wrote to the judiciary. But then there was almost total disregard to the recommendations of the Supreme Court that were made by you.
Yes, that's true. But then there are arms of the state. There is even the Fourth Estate, whose responsibility is then to follow up that this is a right given to us or pronounced by the courts of judicature. It must be implemented, it must be respected, it must be accorded to.
You know the Fourth Estate was engulfed the other day. You saw them being clobbered on the streets of Kampala, my lord. They were beating them mercilessly. Even when they could identify themselves, their pressmen and their jackets and their camera. Even when, sir, they surrendered, they were beaten.
Thank you, that's true. But we as a judiciary, even if when the head of the judiciary was dragged out of his chambers in open daylight and has never been seen again, we've not succumbed to abuse of the rule of law. We have fought since up to now, and we continue to fight for the rule of law. Similarly, journalists may be beaten, have been beaten, will be beaten, but that's not to say we should cow down. We must fight for what is a just society governed on the basis of the rule of law.
There are fears.
It will never be given to you on a silver platter.
There are fears, my lord, that many decisions of courts are tinged with the political doctrine. Question, is this the case?
There is a debate. There are those who belong to the school of thought that even judges or the courts of judicature should engage in playing politics in court. There are those who believe that politics is not for the courts of judicature. The best that the courts of judicature can do is to indulge in judicial activism, not political activism. The moment, and I belong to the second category, the moment the courts of law become political, in the sense I think you're trying to say, that's the end of the rule of law. Because then I must come up with which political thinking do I support and make it the point for my judgment. I think there are areas where a judicial officer can engage in judicial activism to bring the law as it is, in keeping with the aspiration of the people, but in keeping with the supreme law of the land, the Constitution.
The people of Uganda watching and listening to you,
Yeah.
I can imagine they can also remember that, my lord, at one time you served as a minister in the NRM government. They wonder, are you insulated against the political ideologies of the NRM, and couldn't you be, in a way, those things, politics coming back to rise its ugly head in the judiciary?
Well, I am not the first person to be a judge or a judicial officer who was once a politician with a clear line of affiliation, whose political inclination, whose political support was clear. Chief Justice Benedicto Kawanuka, whom we are commemorating, was not only a politician, but was head of a political party, the Democratic Party. He served and was Chief Justice. After him, there are many justices. Justice Mulenga, Justice Kenyamba, Justice Sekoko. These are justices who were active political representatives of their people. Justice Sekoko was a representative during the Obote II government in parliament. Similarly, Justice Mulenga, as I said, served. He was a known, strong member of the Democratic Party and served in the NRM during the broad-based governance. So I am not an exception. I think I always pride myself, Mr. Kamara, of having belonged to all the 4 arms of the state, not 3. As a private practitioner, I contributed to the development and for peace in this country. As a private practitioner, I contributed to the end of the first phase of conflict in northern Uganda. I drafted the 1988 peace accord, which was signed on Saturday, the 3rd of June at Pese Stadium in Gulu. I contributed as a member of the 4th arm of the state. That's how I call it. Then, as a member of parliament, in the bigger sense, I was elected, served in the Constituent Assembly, and I'm proud to have contributed to the making of this constitution. Then I was in government. Then I'm now a member of the judiciary. I have seen it all. And I think it enriches one's understanding of one's country, of understanding of the issues at hand. You may also want to know that as a member of the Constituent Assembly, just to let you know that belonging to a political party doesn't mean one has no independence. The Honorable Cecilia Ogwal brought a motion for the immediate reintroduction of pluralism, political parties, political party activity. It was debated, it was defeated. At that time, I was a government minister, Minister of State for International Relations in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was the only minister in the NRM government who voted in support of Cecilia Ogwal's motion. Unfortunately, it was voted by division of lobby. So there's no pretense that I voted for this one did not. Those in support were on this side, those not in support were on that side, and I was in support openly. The only other minister who, permit me to use the word, did not have the courage was the late Manyanjan Kangi, who remained in the middle. He sat on the fence.
My Lord, you know what I'm hearing.
But the point I'm making is,
yes,
the point
my Lord, I'm
before,
also what I'm hearing
no,
from
just a moment, then you come. Please, just a moment, thank you. If I could stand up and express myself when I'm a government minister, and as a government minister, you can be shuffled out the following day. But as a judge, it takes a lot. You need to read this constitution. It takes a lot for anybody to remove me from being a judge. See, if I have this security, if I could stand on my own in what I believed, in what my conscience dictated, in what my mandate was, when I did not have this security, when I could have been dropped the same night, how about when I am a judge?
I am not, my following question is not doubting your integrity, sir. My following question is trying to draw the attention of the person viewing that you seem to have put a magnifying glass on the colleagues of government where you are working with, who seem to have lost the right way, and you seem to have been the island of a glimmer of hope that we need to take this route. But you know what? They are still in power. The people you disagreed with on those issues, they still run this country. Do you think there's somebody who could stand like you did today on issues? Many people have.
Many people have. I am not an exception to the rule. I only gave because you asked me that I had been an NRM supporter. You didn't say there are many people who have been NRM supporters. You asked me that I have been an NRM supporter. So my response was to explain myself. There are many people out there. We do not go out on the street chest stamping, by the way. As the judiciary, you know, things happen. We have our line of communication with everybody, with the head of state, with other members of the executive, the prime minister, with parliament. There are things that happen which you may not come to know, because that is how things are done. This one of going on the street and chest stamping, it's addressing the gallery. For us to address the issues.
My Lord, yes. Alfonso Owiny-Dollo, we are going to take a break. When we come back, I'll be asking the Deputy Chief Justice on the issue of Parliament, or the Speaker of Parliament writing to the President to bring suspected members of the security forces that have been involved or suspected to have been involved in clobbering people to courts of law for trial. What will he be saying on that matter? We'll be right. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is the Deputy Chief Justice, Alfonso Owiny-Dollo. My Lord, I'm sure by now you know that the Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, wrote to the President demanding that the people in the security apparatus who were accused or were seen to be torturing and beating people must be brought to courts of law and tried in court. Mm-hmm. I know that's the other third arm of government speaking to the executive. Is there a way how also the judiciary could prompt the executive to make sure that happens?
One, Parliament plays an oversight role over the executive. Parliament is the embodiment of the entire representation of the people of Uganda. When you speak of Parliament, you're actually saying all the people of Uganda are assembled there. If it was a Greek city-state, all Ugandans would have been assembled in that place to play their democratic roles and the protection of their rights. So what the Speaker of Parliament did, I've not seen the letter, I've not seen the content, I've read in the press. To write to the President is to do the right thing. You're asking me, would the judiciary do the same? Yes.
Have you done the same?
More than that. We've engaged the state. I can tell you authoritatively, the Chief Justice immediately engaged the executive arm of the state, held meetings with the executive arms of the state, held meetings with the Prime Minister, held meetings with the President of the country. The only problem I seem to think is that every time the Chief Justice or the Deputy Chief Justice engages the executive, it must come out in the open. That's what I'm talking about, addressing the gallery. The methods of doing work. I think the judiciary should be allowed to do its work in the method it deems best. But take my word, we met the President, the Chief Justice and myself, we met the President in State House. The Chief Justice met the Prime Minister and other very high-ranking government officials in his residence on a weekend.
So did you leave with some assurances?
But the fact that we do not go out telling Ugandans we've done this doesn't mean we are not doing it. We are. But you should also understand the limitations to how far we can go, because that matter could come before me tomorrow. If I come up to express myself, probably counsel for the state or counsel for whoever is the respondent. That's the first point of contention. That you already prejudged as before the matter came to you. So we toe a very delicate line, but still we do our work.
There's something that has come here,
yes,
my Lord,
yes,
that
yes.
Public confidence in courts of law continues to be eroded. In Magistrates Court, justice is akin to, some people call it a marketplace, where the highest bidder gets justice. How can we overcome this seemingly kind of rot?
I was having an argument with the IGG, a colleague of mine. We were appointed judges on the same day, about her ranking of corrupt institutions. I told her, I think the police and the judiciary may not be the most corrupt. I am not in any way defending corruption. I'm averse to it. I find it so abhorrent. They may not. The only difference is the only way the police can be corrupt is to do it in the open. And when they tell you about police corruption, they're actually zeroing on the traffic policeman. How else can he be corrupt except to take his ill-gotten consideration when all eyes are seeing? How else? Judiciary. You find a clerk who's not a judicial officer takes the money in the name of the judicial officer. And when they are ranking corrupt institutions, they say the judiciary. Fine, the clerk is a member of the judiciary. But the point being given out there is that it is the judicial officers who are corrupt. I'm not saying judicial officers are not corrupt. Certainly there are corrupt elements. But they cannot form the bulk of the judiciary. The ones who are corrupt are a small percentage. But certainly they stay in the name of the judiciary. Because justice should never ever be for sale. It should not be for purchase. What I told the IGG, Inspector General of Government, which I want to tell all Ugandans, is that in my belief, the Ugandan society is corrupt. It's not like we have people out there who are clean and the judiciary is beckoning for money. Bring money, bring money. It is in the mindset of our people that if you want your thing done, you must pay money. If the Ugandan people stood firm, those who have indulged in corrupt activities to corrupt the judicial officers, if they stood firm and say, no, I'm not assuming the judicial officer asks for money or some consideration. No, I'm not doing that. Come and report. Come and report to the principal judge. Come and report to the chief magistrate. Come and report to the judge, the resident judge in charge of the area, that this person is asking for this so that this is done. Stand your ground, come and report. We are here, my office, you don't need anything, you don't need an appointment. You walk in, because this is the public office. If the people of Uganda did that, I think we will not be hearing of this magnitude of corruption that's talked about.
And talking about corruption...
But for me, the more corrupt people and institutions, which are so smart, which are so subtle, people who steal in billions. So to rank the judiciary as the most corrupt, to rank the police as the most corrupt, I am not defending them. I think it's misplaced.
You know, talking about
people who steal in trillions.
Yes, you're talking about people who steal in trillions and billions, yes. Which could be the case in Uganda, my lord.
Yes.
There's a moral crisis. People seem to have seen that the courts can go and try the small fish, and we see them and they're taken to court and maybe justice seems to be done. Mm-hmm. But there seems to be the sacred cows, the big people who are not touched as much when we talk about issues of fighting corruption, graft.
Mm-hmm. I agree entirely. I agree with you. But you know, the judicial does not go all out and say, bring Mr. Amara to us to be prosecuted. We are at the receiving end. The judicial cannot say, bring so-and-so and prosecute him so that we can convict him. No. Even when you're brought before us, we take you from the point that you're presumed innocent. And your guilt must be proved beyond reasonable doubt. That's the role of the judiciary. Now, what you're saying is, it is also part of corruption, that only certain categories of people are prosecuted, certain categories are untouchable. That is actually the essence of corruption that we must fight. Now, the judiciary cannot, unless a matter is brought to me, it's like a doctor. If you do not go to a doctor, it's not going to heal you from your sitting room. You must go to a doctor and get treatment. Similarly, the judiciary is sitting there waiting. Bring the big fish and see if the judiciary will not handle the big fish.
My lord,
until then,
there are so many cases nowadays, crimes of murder. Mm-hmm. People are killed, sometimes in their homes, sometimes shot dead on their gates as they reach home, or even on the highways. Yeah, yeah. I know the job of investigation is a job for police, yes, to follow up and then they bring a case to you. But what can we as judiciary do to ensure that these cases are followed and concluded to their logical conclusion, so that again justice is seen to be done, but these murders can stop because we know we have a robust judiciary?
Yes. Once a matter has been brought to the judiciary, once somebody has been arraigned, that's where we play our role. We insist investigations are completed, the evidence is adduced in court, and we determine whether it meets the threshold which is set up by law to find someone guilty. If not, we release. And at times, of course, we are misunderstood. Because for us, we operate in accordance with the law. Beyond that, we can only speak like you can speak. You probably have a better mouthpiece than us, the judicial. Before the wrongdoers or the suspect is brought to court, you have a better forum than the judiciary. You say, please complete investigation or carry out investigation and take this to the judiciary.
Do you as a judiciary also get a sense of frustration that people who are supposed to be their part in the dispensation of justice somehow are wobbly, or they don't do it at all?
Oh, yes, we do. Let me tell you, at times, a matter is brought before court, and you see that the evidence that is adduced in court is laughable. You get frustrated. You even question, why was this person brought before court in the first place? There are instances where you find that the investigation left a lot to be desired. Everything, there is a pointer to the guilt of that accused person. Everything points to the guilt. But as I told you, there is a threshold. There is that imaginary line, which is only in the mind of the court, to be satisfied that the guilt of this person has been proved beyond this line, it is above this line. The moment in my mind I think that, yes, they have proved this guilt, but that proof is below this line, I must acquit.
There was a case that came out so repeatedly, a complaint of the backlog of cases, and some people were languishing in jail because the cases were too many and they're spending a lot of time on remand and things like that. I know a judiciary did some kind of census about the cases. Could you bring us to speed on where we stand as far as the backlog?
No, I don't have it at hand, but what I know is that we are still heavy on backlog. And backlog is a global problem. It's not peculiar to Uganda. It's global. If they tell you the volume of backlog in India, you laugh. You would say, what? Anyhow, I think we should deal with, why do we have backlog in the first place? The truth and the reality of backlog is with us. But why do we have backlog in the first place? What do we need to do so that we can tackle seriously and effectively tackle backlog? Those are the questions we should be concerning ourselves with. We have a population of 40 million Ugandans today. We have under 60 high court judges. We have 13 court of appeal justices who are also constitutional court justices. We have 9 Supreme Court justices. We have under 400 magistrates, all of it under 400, for that population of 40 million. How do you expect? I'll give you, my boss, my immediate boss, the Chief Justice, was in Malaysia last year. They have a population of about 30 million people. But high court judges alone are 150. 150, 3 times the number of justices we have here in the High Court. So for them, a case which has delayed in court for 8 months is already a backlog. For us, we say 2 years is backlog, and we can't even tackle the backlog. So the issue is, we must give the judiciary of Uganda its rightful place. And many times, I believe when you're speaking, you say the judiciary is the third arm of government. That's not right. The judiciary is one of the 3 arms of government, at par. So if you give considerations to parliament, we have 400 and something members of parliament against 50 judges of the High Court for the population. Both are serving the same population. If commensurately the judiciary could also have 200 High Court judges because of the 40 million population, I think, and I have said, if I had 30 justices in this court, the Court of Appeal of Uganda, I would assure you, you file your case on the 1st of January, by 31st of December, you are no longer in my court.
So
That one I could give you.
So what I'm
sure.
hearing from you is that you are throwing a challenge to the executive that we need appoint more judges. You're also throwing a challenge to the parliament, appropriate more resources. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Recently, for the second time, Parliament came out with a resolution to enhance the number of judges of the High Court from 50 to 82. That's where it ended, to my knowledge. That's where it ended. They did not task the executive that we've come up with this resolution. We don't want resolutions which are done by Parliament in vain. We do not want to engage in futile exercises. We will not sit to act on this until our resolution, which is well considered, is acted upon.
My Lord,
Yes.
Deputy Chief Justice Alphonse Owiny-Dollo, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll be asking about the report that was written by Justice Kanyehamba. He did his investigation and made some recommendations. Will the judiciary work upon that report? We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is the Deputy Chief Justice Alphonse Owiny-Dollo. I want to draw your attention to one of your colleagues, I should say, Justice Kanyehamba. He says he wrote a report implicating judges. Why was it never investigated?
I've not seen that report myself, but if he probably wrote it before I took up my charge as Deputy Chief Justice. But again, if he has made a report on any judge, the proper institution for investigating that matter is the Judicial Service Commission.
He seemed to have spoken with a lot of clarity, sir, that this report was seen by the senior officials in the judiciary, and it was talking about corruption, and what I could get is that the report was sidelined.
I don't know what you mean by sideline, but what I know is whenever somebody raises any allegation against any judicial officer, it is investigated. There's one thing to raise an allegation, and then there is another to bring cogent and tangible evidence.
Our neighbors in the east, I'm talking about the Republic of Kenya, seem to have gone a notch higher by starting some kind of an inquiry into the judiciary. Do you think something like this that happened in Kenya can be good for Uganda?
Oh, Uganda has inquired into judges. I think when I was in practice around early 90s or there was a whole judicial tribunal to determine whether a judge had acted wrongly or rightly. And it came up with a pronouncement. It was in this country. You're aware of this? Yes. There are judicial officers who have been advised to retire. And if you're advised to retire, by the way, that is also a disciplinary form of action, where whatever has been alleged against you may not strictly have been proved. But there's every pointer that where this smoke is coming from, there was a huge fire. And you want to do justice to both sides. The alleging person who has failed to prove, and the person against whom there is this serious allegation.
So, but that was back in the 90s, my lord. Do you think we need another probe to look into the judiciary, like a commission of inquiry, which is, because now the cases seem to be growing, and in the 90s, it's more than 20 years ago. That's almost a quarter of a century now.
Let me tell you my experience.
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you my experience, and I need to say this. I'll use this, and you better listen very clearly. When you come before me with him, you are certainly adversaries. And that's the reason why you come to court. Very few people in this country lose a case in court and lose gracefully. When you lose before me, you go out there saying, the judge was bought by the other side. When tomorrow in another case, You come and you win before me, to use the normal language. You win before me. And you know you've not paid me 1 cent. You don't go out to say, oh, by the way, I won this case without buying the judge. In other words, you don't reverse that perception, that allegation you made, and people go around with. So for whatever decision I make, one side is certainly unhappy. One side is happy. And the unhappy side will say all sorts of things. Probably happens the world over, I don't know. 2, I'll tell you my two experiences. One was very recent, here, when I was very Deputy Chief Justice. And you better listen, and I want the people of Uganda to understand this. And I'm not opposed to any investigation in the judiciary, but there must be material upon which you can establish this commission. But if you're going to establish this commission on small talk, on perception, on allegations which people make for whatever reason, then you'll have to set up commissions of inquiry on every institution in this country. I don't know whether you have the resources. But let me tell you my personal experience, and it is really important, and it will take some time. 2 of us were sent 2011 to conduct election petitions in Masaka. I had 5 cases. My sister, Lady Justice Elizabeth Musoke, had 5 cases. We started hearing. My boss, then the principal judge, calls me on phone. I'd gone to bury a cousin at home, so I was coming back to Kampala. Told me, there's something very serious I want to discuss with you. So tell me, say, no. Even if you reach Kampala at midnight, call me. Then I knew it was real serious. I could not wait for tomorrow. So I stopped over around Kafu. And I called them and said, I must know it now. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wake you up in the night. You say somebody had brought an allegation that I had been given 13 million shillings so that somebody would lose an election petition and another person wins. So I laughed, which is my nature. I really laughed. I said, which file is this? He said, no, when you come, I will tell you. He didn't tell me the parties. Then I asked 2 questions. Why 13 million? Why not 10? Why not 15? Why not 20? You get what I'm saying? The figure 3 sounded funny to me. Why 13 million? Then I said, am I so worthless that I would sell my soul, my conscience, for money, and worse still, 13 million? I have handled in practice, in private practice, I've handled hundreds of millions. Why on earth would I? So I said, I don't want to know who these parties are. I want to eat this man's money or that woman's money. All that you need to do, remove this file from me and give it to my sister, Honorable Justice Elizabeth Musoke. Pick a file from her and give it to me. I don't want to know who the parties are. I will know that the party who is complaining is in this file when you remove the file. So when I came back to Kampala the following day, he raised me and he laughed and said, go and do your work. I was chief magistrate there. I know what people there can say. And it ended there. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. 2.
So there can be wild allegations?
Oh, yes. Especially if you're firm. Then somebody says, oh, the mischief I want, and some people just want adjournment all the time, and you say you're going to proceed. So to curtail that, they must stay in you because you're doing the right thing. You say, no, I came here for 1 month, and I'm going to hear this within 1 month.
But with all respect...
No, but I want you to listen to the second one, which will... We had Mbale constitutional petitions, the consolidated petitions. I did 2 things. I decided Kampala is not the only place where you can render justice. The people of Uganda must also see how justice is rendered, or how injustice is rendered, if the courts of law render injustice. So we chose Mbale. We couldn't go all over Uganda. And it is a practice I'm going to follow. Next time you'll hear we are in Arua, we are in Kabale. The second thing I did was to invite you, NTV and the other media houses, come and cover the proceedings. Let everybody follow from day one to the last day, so that you know whether there is mischief, you know how we arrive at whatever decisions were made. It's the first of its kind, by the way, where we cover this like that. Then when we closed the hearing, when we retired to write our judgments, which of course now you know, attempts were made to compromise me. And we're talking about big money, not this type of money you
I'm sure there's not enough money in the world to buy your integrity.
No, thank you.
Even if it is big money.
Thank you. It was big money.
But I still think there's not enough money.
Thank you. The only thing that could probably compromise me if you say I will go to heaven after. Anyhow, I declined. Told them, look, I would rather stay with my conscience than eat this money and die every day thereafter. I declined.
Why do you think, my Lord,
no,
somebody
please be patient.
Chief
Be patient.
Justice
You'll ask
dangling
me
something to you because it's disrespectful.
Wait first. I'll answer that one. But you want to know what happened. Then an attempt was made to frame me in this office. Come with money, enter here, and come with you members of the press. All that you required was money to be, somebody to throw money and scatter it in front of me or open up the box. I don't know what it was. And you take a picture and that was all.
Even that was attempted?
Oh yes, it failed. One of them said, no, but this man is innocent. I've never heard of him taking money. I've never, among judicial officers where people suspect, Owiny-Dollo is not one of those I have heard, no. So I came to know about it. Then after that failed, of course I reported to the Chief Justice. When that failed, they now started going around. Deputy Chief Justice Owiny-Dollo is asking for very big money. I heard of it. Again, I reported to the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice took necessary action. I will not go into that. What was the reason? There are people who wanted the decision in Bale to be foiled. The moment you could catch, when they failed with me,
petition.
Yes, the constitutional petition.
Constitutional petition.
Yes. Once I had been stained like that, of course then there would be no judgment. Whatever judgment that would be delivered would have no credibility, and there would be need to reconstitute a panel. Probably other judges will say, I don't want to be there. You cannot compel a judge. And hopefully there would be no panel to sit, and then the status quo before the petition would continue. You get what I'm saying? Would continue. Anyway, that one failed. What I'm trying to tell you is, in the same category, people will speak out there, after they have tried to corrupt me, so I have declined. After they've even tried now to frame me, it failed because we took the necessary action, because we're going to treat it as an assault. And if you assault me now, you run into a lot of problems. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. We were ready for them, and we were going to treat it as an assault. To throw money at me was an assault. They became wise. They did not do it. But the point I'm making is, if in this country some people can contrive to do this to a Deputy Chief Justice, how about the magistrate in Amudat? How about the magistrate in Toroko? How much more vulnerable are these people? It said, for me, it leaves me now saying, how many of those people against whom corruption charges are brought are genuinely corrupt? That's the problem we are dealing with. It comes from society.
What mechanisms are there to protect such a magistrate in Toroko, in Kiruhura, and in Aduku?
First of all, is to be clean. Be clean, there are people, and from my recent experiences, when you are clean, there are people who will say, no, not him. You get what I'm saying? And that would save the situation. The gentleman or the gentle lady, I don't know who they are, might have come in actually, and there would have been a fracas here. But one person says, no, my heart tells me we shouldn't do this to this man because he's clean. I've never heard him, when we speak about that one is like this, even that perception is not on him. And that's what saved the situation. So the magistrates down there need to act clean, overboard, and be clear, let people know that justice is not for sale.
And one of my second last question, my lord, is on the appointment of the judges, which is largely a prerogative of the president. And some people say he cherry picks his allies who are brought by the Judicial Service Commission, and they are the ones who ultimately are appointed judges, and then, of course, confirmed by the parliament, which is largely 80% NRM. Do you think the appointment should be done differently?
First of all, that the allegation that judges are appointed at the whim of the president is wrong, both in law and fact. The process that leads to the president appointing somebody is so elaborate. So elaborate. First of all, the present dispensation, you have to be nominated to the Judicial Service Commission by somebody or some institution. Then they sit down and decide, this is the Judicial Service Commission. It's made of eminent Ugandans, people who are like you. Yes.
I'm humbled to hear
yes,
that.
yes. These are people who sit there. They are not from State House. These are from the works and of Ugandans. Gender is represented, regions are represented, and so on and so forth. They sit, they call you for interview. They have their own standards. There are those who may not be called for interview. But then they call you for interview, and they literally grill you. They call it an interaction. But that is a misnomer.
It's a grilling.
Oh, yes. This is a euphemism for real sweat-dripping exercise. They really deal with you 1 hour and everybody's pouncing on you. There are 8 of them. And before you've answered this question, at least you are decent enough. When I say, no, wait, let me answer this, somebody's asking you, then you say, look, do they mean to frustrate me or what? But they really grill you, and then they decide in their wisdom that we are sending so many names to the president for consideration. And the president does not say, the president has got his own institutions for verifying, for getting maybe some materials which the GSC may not have had, and getting back to GSC if need be, that we have this information. And then the president zeroes down on you, Mr. Amara, to be the Deputy Chief Justice. He has to send the name to Parliament. If Parliament finds that you are not worth to be a Deputy Chief Justice, they'll give their reasons.
There are not many precedents when they have turned down a choice of the president.
No, but that's a different issue now. You're asking me. You said he does it at his own whim. That's the question I'm responding to. Whether these institutions perform their task, their constitutional duty, and these are constitutional duties, it's a different matter. But the fact of the matter is that the law is very clear, the constitution is very clear. You go through a sieve, a series of sieves actually, before the president can append his signature to an instrument. So I think if these institutions are rubber stamping the whim of some other person, I wouldn't know. But I speak from experience. It's no small matter appearing before Judicial Service Commission.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to end from where we started.
Yes.
The memorial lecture of Benedicto Kiwanuka. Is it going to be an annual? Why now, 46 years later?
One, I begin with an apology. The Benedicto Kiwanuka Memorial should have started in 1973. The moment he disappeared, we should have started this in 1973. Only the Uganda Law Society at some stage, I forget the year, organized one memorial lecture. But we've decided as a judiciary, better late than never. This is just the inaugural lecture. We will be having this annually, and we believe and hope those who will take charge of the judiciary after us will continue with this practice. Because as I told you at the beginning, this was Uganda's darkest hour in the judiciary. We've not seen anything near that. Of course, the things you pointed out, yes, they are wrong, and we've condemned them in very strong language. But none of them has gone anywhere near the abduction of the chief judicial officer, open daylight, and he has never been seen again.
Okay.
So we must remember the memory of Benedicto Kiwanuka annually. It is not about Benedicto Kiwanuka. It's about the rule of law. We are commemorating the importance of the rule of law. We are actually telling the world that yes, Benedicto Kiwanuka was removed away from us in the manner he was. But at the end of the day, the rule of law triumphs against evil.
Alfonso Owiny-Dollo, Deputy Chief Justice, thank you very much for accepting to speak to us. We appreciate your insights on the matter, and thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Good night, Uganda.